Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a single dense stack of sources. It could be articles, research, or in this case, pure metaphysical material. And we really act as your guides.
Right. We try to pull out the essential insights, those aha moments.
Exactly. So you feel like you're instantly and thoroughly well-informed without having to do all the heavy lifting yourself.
And our goal here is to get into the specific details, sort through these really abstract concepts, and connect the dots on some of the profound implications you might miss on a first read.
Yeah. And before we really plunge in, just a quick declaration for everyone listening.
Okay.
This deep dive, which is all about consciousness, matter, the very nature of reality, it's being distributed totally free of charge on all major platforms.
And that's for educational purposes.
It is. We just believe this kind of insight, it really should be accessible to everybody.
I agree. So today we are focusing on a truly remarkable document.
We got.
It's session 73 of the early sessions, book 2 of the Seth material. And it's very specific. It was recorded late on a Wednesday evening, July 22, 1964.
Wow.
Right at 9 p.m.
And for anyone who's maybe a bit new to this, let's set the scene with the core cast. We've got Jane Roberts, the medium, who Seth calls Rupert.
Right, and her husband, Robert Butts, who was meticulously recording every single word.
They were in Elmira, New York, and the notes about the scene, I mean, they're so critical to understanding what happens next.
They really are. The description is just classic summer night, hot, humid, a little rainy, but the internal atmosphere was much more charged than the weather.
How so?
Well, Jane or Rupert was intensely nervous. They were expecting 2 new witnesses, a Dr. and Mrs. Piper.
Ah, guests.
Yes, and she was just completely fixated on whether or not these important guests would actually show up.
And that nervousness, that becomes the very first lesson of the night, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
just sets this perfect practical tone for the whole session.
It really does. Seth opens by pointing out that Rupert's conscious worrying about the guests arriving after their 8 p.m. deadline, it was actively interfering with the psychic reception.
So it's an immediate, real-time demonstration of how this all works.
Exactly. Seth says, and I'm quoting here, "Your preoccupation with whether or not the visitors would arrive after 8 o'clock blocked him from knowing this."
So he's saying the anxiety was like a jammer signal.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
He clarifies that he could have given Rupert the answer, but the conscious static, that worry, it just impeded the flow of inner knowledge.
It's fascinating. It confirms that our everyday mental state isn't just, some separate noise. It fundamentally dictates what we can access on a deeper level.
Right. You can't be worrying about the small material details and expect to get clarity on the cosmic ones at the same time. It doesn't work that way.
The human mind just wants that certainty, that logical confirmation.
Yes, and when it can't confirm a simple fact like, are the guests coming?
Yeah.
That agitation just eats up all the bandwidth you need for deeper communication.
And there's this great little anecdote that proves the point.
Oh, yeah. While Seth is quietly dictating all this, Robert, who's sitting by the window, he just spots the Pipers turning the corner.
Huh. So the mundane world had to provide the answer because the inner channel was basically choked off by worry.
That's it exactly. And once the Pipers are seated, the tension breaks and you can just feel the energy shift, even just reading the transcript.
Right. Jane's voice, which had been normal and leisurely, it instantly becomes much stronger and somewhat deeper.
A completely different quality, signaling Seth's full presence.
And then Seth's opening line to these new guests is just classic dry humor. He doesn't miss a beat.
What does he say?
I have never been much of a host. I hope, however, that you have explained your name and the circumstances surrounding it.
Wow, that's a confident, slightly challenging greeting. Very non-traditional.
It immediately told the Pipers, we're not here for tea and small talk.
No, you're here for a deep exploration of reality itself.
So with the stage set, that's what we're doing. We are diving into session 73. And this material, it challenges our fundamental understanding of physical reality, of matter itself.
And then after that, we get into some truly specific and often hilarious past life reveals for the new guests.
Get ready for instantaneous existence and some karmic comedy. All right, let's jump into Deep Dive Part 1. This is where we start to question the very foundation of the physical universe. We're calling it the chair trick.
And the core thesis Seth presents here is it's truly mind-bending. It requires some careful unpacking.
We all just assume matter is solid, right? A
Right.
chair is a chair, table's a table, it's durable, it's continuous.
We assume it's just there, enduring through time. But Seth just completely dismantles that idea. He argues that matter isn't continuous at all.
So what is it?
It's a constantly renewed, simultaneous expression of energy and consciousness.
And this isn't just some philosophical idea. He makes it really concrete with this shocking claim. This is our hook for this segment.
Okay.
Yes. The truth is that grass does not grow from seed. I mean, that just flies directly in the face of everything we observe. How do you even begin to reconcile that?
Well, Seth explains that our senses are extremely limited instruments. They're tuned to only one specific band of frequency.
Okay.
So we perceive planting the seed, and then later we perceive the grass. And because of that sequence, we draw an erroneous conclusion about cause and effect. We think it's one continuous thing slowly changing.
So we see a pattern of continuity, and we just mistake that pattern for the actual process.
Precisely. Seth says that on a subatomic level, the atoms and molecules that make up that seed or that chair, they aren't slowly evolving. They were appearing and disappearing instantaneously.
Millions of times per second.
Millions of times. It's not one continuous object slowly maturing. It is a rapid series of completely new constructions built moment by moment.
That's a huge distinction. We're not talking about slow evolution. We're talking about quantum-level reconstruction.
It is. And if the energy performance brings about a complete change of form, like a seed becoming grass, that's the only time we're forced to admit that what we thought was continuous has suddenly become something else entirely.
Okay, but then if I'm sitting on a chair and that chair is vanishing and reappearing millions of times a second, basically a new chair every microsecond,
Yeah.
what stops it from degrading? Why doesn't it just flicker or fall apart?
And that is the essential question that brings it all back to consciousness.
Right.
Seth's explanation is that the chair only appears durable because the frequency of these pulsations is far too rapid for our outer senses to pick up. We're seeing the collective pattern, not the individual flickers.
So our senses are creating an illusion of flow, but really we're just perceiving the still frames.
Yes, and the pattern, the blueprint, is maintained by the underlying consciousness within that energy. It's the same blueprint being executed over and over instantaneously.
So the chair's reality, as Seth says, is limited to the recognition which you give it as an object.
Exactly. We project durability onto it, and our senses, which are tuned to that expectation, perceive a durable object. If our conscious and subconscious expectations were to shift,
The chair would appear to shift too.
it would. It makes the chair less of a fixed object and more of a highly localized, consensus-driven energy event.
So if you could somehow slow down your perception enough, the chair would stop being a chair and would just be this rapid succession of light and energy bursts.
That's the implication, yes. Seth talks about the gradations we can perceive. When the difference between one instantaneous construction and the next is tiny, from microsecond to microsecond.
We call it solid.
Yeah.
We call it continuous. We miss the rebuilding completely.
It's only when the energy construction shifts dramatically enough, like that massive leap from a seed's blueprint to a blade of grass's blueprint, that our limited senses are forced to register the change.
And we call it growth.
But even that's misleading. It's just the instant execution of a dramatically different pattern.
The consequence of this is just immense. If the chair isn't durable and it isn't continuous, then the entire physical universe is so much more fluid and instantaneous than we think.
It transforms reality from a noun, a fixed thing, into a verb, an ongoing instantaneous activity.
And that is a perfect mind-bending transition because while matter might be instantaneous, the consciousness that creates it, well, that clearly spans across millennia.
Which is exactly what we see when Seth turns his attention to the Pipers.
Okay, we're moving now into Deep Dive Part 2, and this is where Seth welcomes Dr. and Mrs. Piper Norman and Ayada and gives them some, truly specific and often funny past life readings.
And these narratives are so great because they ground that abstract idea of instantaneous creation in the continuous, evolving identity of the soul.
Yeah, they show that personal development is just. It's not a straight line. It's nonlinear. It mixes genders, eras, skills.
All leading toward a more coherent purpose in the end.
So let's start with Dr. Piper Norman. In this life, he's a doctor. He mends people's physical structures.
And Seth reveals that his entity has had 3 notable lives before this one, twice a man and once a woman.
A brief existence, that one. Died young in childbirth in Sweden, 1872.
But the karmic echo, the connection to this life, is just remarkable. Seth details a life from around 832 AD near Palestine.
And in that life, Norman was involved in an accident with horses where he broke a man's back.
What a specific, almost comically blunt detail to reveal to a back doctor.
Right. And Seth makes a point to say there was no deep guilt involved at the time, but Norman did kind of pass by a feeling of guilt in that subsequent female life.
And now, in this life, he works diligently to mend the very structures he accidentally damaged all those centuries ago. It's not punishment.
No, it's about the innate drive toward balance and resolution within the self. The subconscious is seeking to reconcile that past experience through his choice of profession.
This connects so beautifully to his intellectual history. Seth notes Norman's deep interest in matters that lie beneath matter.
Which didn't just start in medical school.
Not at all. It was nurtured in a previous life, in 1732 Germany, in the city of Cologne, where he was an alchemist.
That shift from alchemy to modern medicine is brilliant.
It is. Alchemy was this ancient, often undisciplined quest to understand the transformation of matter, turning lead into gold.
And now, as a doctor, he's still working with transformation, but in a very structured, disciplined way, focused on the human body.
The most immediate manifestation of that instantaneous matter we were just talking about.
And Seth ties it all together by saying the key here is discipline, which Norman had been lacking in the past, but is now somewhat being achieved.
The alchemy provided the conceptual curiosity, but the life as a disciplined doctor provides the focus and practical application he needed.
Absolutely. Okay, now for Mrs. Piper, Ayada. Seth says she's been a male twice in previous lives.
Which gave her a certain open-mindedness that is now blended with her more feminine intuition.
And her lives are quite a narrative sweep. There was a humble, practical life as a boatsman.
And Seth specified he handled small craft, skirting the Mediterranean shores, carrying merchandise, perhaps cotton, but definitely not spices.
It's those tiny specific details that make these sessions so real.
They do. But the real narrative, gold, comes from her life as a soldier during the Crusades.
And this is where Seth just steps back and delivers one of his signature devastating critiques of human folly.
He describes the whole era with such cutting clarity. He says, men were driven like fools and sometimes brainless idiots in fine pursuit of an idea of God which they could neither conceive or construct.
Wow. That is a powerful assessment of ideological warfare.
Ouch is right. And Ayada, as that soldier, was as superstitious as the rest and fought for this poorly conceived idea. He was killed by a Moor near Lepanto in his late 50s.
And the personal life details. It's like a Shakespearean drama.
It is. He left not one, but 2 women, and a son, and 4 daughters.
And the message he sent to one of the women via a young man was not delivered.
That undelivered message, it's that kind of small human failure that just echoes through the subconscious. Seth says it won't consciously mean anything to Mrs. Piper now, but for that personality, it was a moment of failure and regret that carried weight.
It just shows the incredible detail the soul's record maintains.
Much like Norman, Ayada in that Crusader life depended overmuch on intuitions, which, without balance can lead to folly. She also needs to achieve greater discipline.
Finally, we have the Piper's child, Waldoon, and he is the wild card.
He is. Seth says Waldoon has had 4 previous existences, which makes him older than his parents, in a manner of speaking.
And his lives are wonderfully eclectic. He started as a scribe in Babylonia, working on stone tablets.
That ability to organize and structure things was later picked up in 16th century England, where he became a minor organ composer.
The skill of pattern making just transcended the media, from language on tablets to musical composition.
But the detail that really just jumps out at you.
A balloonist.
The balloonist. His most unique life. A girl in medieval France with mechanical talent. She cared for her father's shop, which was involved with a forerunner of balloons used for distributing letters.
A little girl involved in early aerial mail delivery. It's just so specific and hilarious.
A mechanical poet, a Babylonian scribe, and a French aeronaut. It just shows the bizarre, non-linear path the soul takes, picking up all this specialized knowledge.
And the big question is, why are these 4 souls together now? Seth is clear there was no communication between the 4 of you in the past.
No familial linkage. They connected now telepathically because their subconscious interests investigating matter, structure, discipline were aligned.
And that's a huge takeaway for you listening. Your deepest relationships might not be from past family ties, but from a shared, deep-seated intellectual or spiritual pursuit.
Exactly. Seth advises them to continue their association, noting the unutilized abilities they all hold.
That whole narrative journey is just a fantastic backdrop for the heavy-duty metaphysics that comes next. We're moving into Deep Dive Part 3, the expanding canvas of reality.
Yes, Seth shifts back from the personal histories to the cosmic scale, and he revisits an analogy he used in a previous session.
He updates the imaginary painting analogy, right? He grounds it in the room by referencing an actual painting Robert had done of Jane by a river.
And this analogy is just essential for grasping this idea of multidimensional reality expansion.
Okay, so imagine that painting, Robert's portrait of Jane by a river. Now imagine it starts to expand.
But not physically. The frame, the back of the canvas, they stay the same size.
Right. But within the painted space, the trees grow taller, the background recedes to create depth, and the water actually starts to flow.
This is the mechanism Seth uses to explain universal expansion. The universe isn't expanding into empty space.
It's expanding qualitatively.
Through what he calls value fulfillment. And this qualitative depth, it makes no impression on the back of the painting, which represents our physical linear space.
Okay, let's unpack that term, value fulfillment. It's easy to think that means like moral value, but that's not what he's talking about, is it?
Not at all. Value here is about a qualitative increase in meaning, intensity, and realized potential.
So the full flowering of potential within the consciousness that's constructing reality.
Exactly. The universe doesn't need to get physically bigger if it can expand infinitely in meaning and experience.
And the analogy for this is just striking. He compares the depth of reality not to something physical, like plunging into a river.
But to a psychological experience, like the depth of a trance or the sheer intensity of pain.
Jane or Rupert had already written about this, hadn't she? Seth references her own words.
He does. Pain was deeper than a lake or a river. It's a depth of perspective, a depth of intensity. It's a psychological dimension that's way more vast than any physical measurement.
And this leads to this profound implication about unperceived physical constructions.
Yes. If the universe is layered by value and perspective, that means the spaces we think of as empty are anything but.
Seth states this so explicitly and powerfully. He says, there are multitudinous physical constructions in the space between these two chairs, of which you are not aware.
Because you cannot perceive the perspective in which they occur.
Hold on. Actual physical constructions. Not just energy, but objects and entities functioning in the exact same spatial coordinates that we're in.
That is the definition of a layered reality operating on different frequency gradations.
Like a radio.
Exactly like a radio. You're tuned into the specific frequency, the perspective framework, that lets you register this room, this chair, the pipers. But there are countless other frequencies.
Countless other fully constructed realities occupying the exact same space.
Which you just lack the sensory tuning mechanism to perceive.
So the reason we don't collide with them is that they operate on a whole different framework that we just can't register, like two radio waves passing through the same air without interfering.
It completely redefines space. Space isn't some vast, empty container. It's an infinitely layered canvas where expansion happens by deepening and broadening perspective and value.
And the chair, which we learned as being instantaneously reconstructed, is just one possible expression of energy within this infinite layered space. All right, so now we take these huge ideas, instantaneous reality, layered dimensions, value fulfillment, and we bring them right back down to earth, right down to your own body in Deep Dive Part 4, Mind over Matter.
Right. How does all of this physics and metaphysics actually affect my day-to-day life?
And the connection is the ultimate practical takeaway of this entire session. If matter is instantaneous, and if consciousness maintains the pattern,
then the individual is literally constructing his own physical universe. This is the core principle of conscious manifestation, but with a mechanistic explanation behind it.
it just flips the script on victimhood entirely.
Right.
We aren't passive recipients of some random physical reality.
No, we're the active generator. Our expectations and beliefs are the ongoing blueprint for that instantaneous construction.
And this is where Seth gets super specific. He moves beyond general philosophy and actually identifies a core physical mechanism involved.
The thyroid gland.
The thyroid. He says it operates strongly in regard to our expectations, regulating key hormonal balances under normal circumstances.
So it's like a regulatory safety valve, making sure our internal chemical processes are stable as we go about subconsciously building our reality.
Precisely. But when that expectation is hijacked, when it's dominated by intense panic or fear, the whole mechanism goes haywire.
Right, Seth says the thyroid becomes overly stimulated because it's highly sensitive to those extreme emotions.
So what happens when that stress response, funneled through the thyroid, hits the subconscious construction mechanism?
The thyroid, which affects other glands that work with our inner subconscious, causes those abilities to actually create in matter the object of the fears.
That is profound. It's not just psychosomatic symptoms, where stress makes an existing condition worse.
No.
He's suggesting that deep, persistent fear literally issues a structural command to the energy that builds our reality and creates the illness or the obstacle in solid form.
It translates the emotional fear into biochemical signals, which the Depper creative self then interprets as the desired blueprint.
You feared poverty, so your subconscious built circumstances that replicate poverty. You feared illness, so it manifested the physical condition.
It's the ultimate act of self-sabotage. The inner self, which has these immense, little-used abilities to heal and maintain balance, is being harnessed to create the very object of its anxieties.
We're overriding our natural healing capacity with fear-based blueprints.
Which leads to his powerful concluding metaphor, just a perfect summary of self-made suffering.
You knock your head against walls that you yourselves have made.
We struggle against limitations that we ourselves generated using our own inherent power. The walls are real, they are made of matter.
But they only exist because our subconscious fear designed and built them.
It's a literal self-made prison. And because those walls are instantly constructed and maintained based on our ongoing expectation,
If you could fundamentally shift the expectation.
the walls would cease to be constructed. They would simply vanish.
Wow. And Seth promises a future lengthy discussion on this, the actual physical and subconscious mechanisms involved. But the message for today is just crystal clear.
Matter is malleable, and your deepest, most panicked expectations are the blueprint the universe is following.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground in this really insightful deep dive into session 73 of the Early Sessions Book 2.
We have. Let's try to review the 4 main pillars of knowledge we've extracted here.
Okay, first, we just radically redefine the physical universe. Matter is not continuous, it's not durable.
It is instantaneous, constantly rebuilt by energy and consciousness. The physical world is a rapid series of instantaneous creations. That's the chair trick.
Second, we saw consciousness spanning millennia. The fascinating past lives of the Pipers, Norman the alchemist who learned discipline,
And is now mending the backs he once accidentally broke. Ayada, the superstitious crusader who gained open-mindedness.
and Waldoon, the scribe who had that wonderful mechanical talent for letter delivery balloons in medieval France.
Third, we explored reality as a canvas that expands not in physical space, but through value fulfillment.
Right. It showed us that the universe is layered, it's psychologically deeper than any river, and it's teeming with physical constructions on perspective frameworks we can't currently see.
And finally, we connected all that cosmology right back to our personal health.
We learned that our conscious fears, channeled through physical mechanisms like the thyroid, directly instruct our subconscious to physically construct the very obstacles we fear most.
We are actively building the walls we struggle against.
Now, before we wrap up, Seth left some specific advice for the Pipers, which is really excellent guidance for anyone encountering this kind of material.
He told them to read the material from the beginning, excluding the personal stuff, to gain comprehending and benefiting. This material really builds on itself.
And we strongly encourage you to heed that advice. If this discussion has ignited your curiosity about the true depth of consciousness, the Seth material books are just an unparalleled resource.
You can find more information, including the entire collection of the early sessions and other essential resources, just by visiting the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That's at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
So we're going to leave you with one final thought, a reflective moment Seth offered right at the very end of the session.
I remember this. The host asked why their psychological time experiments would go better the following week.
And Seth simply replied that it had to do with the ebb and flow of your own energies.
Which raises a powerful question for you, the listener. If even the success of an experiment or your own feeling of competence, your focus, your personal energy, if all that is cyclical and predictable on a deeper level,
How much of your current perceived reality, those times you feel stuck, frustrated, or blocked, is simply the ebb phase of an inherent energy flow you aren't consciously tracking?
and if you knew, really knew, that the natural flow phase was inevitably returning, how would that knowledge change your current perception of those self-made walls?
Something profound to mull over until our next deep dive. Good night, and keep questioning everything.